So DCIM, typically it's more data center infrastructure management type stuff. So I'll focus a bit on that. I'll talk a little bit about outside plant too, but I'm just going to navigate down into some elevations, more building type elevations here. So we'll start here with a building and some floors and just talk about, how you can populate this, kind of what you can get out of netTerrain as far as your documentation, and so on. So, there's netTerrain is the product that we manufacture. There's obviously other products out there that do DCIM. We all have different kind of ways of doing things and licensing things. So you want to find the one that obviously is the right fit for you and what your sort of documentation project and needs are. We're a very visual tool. So you can see here, I got a picture of the building, a building, and I can actually turn that off if you want to see what it looks like without. That's just an uploaded JPEG. It's nice for reference for sure. The objects in the middle, these are node type objects from our catalog. Each one of these is representing a floor. So if I select the third floor on the left, you'll see it says floor, and there's an ID, and there's some details about the floor. Circuit, 13 circuits are basically passing through this floor, and so on. So it's just giving you information about, in this case, the building that you're looking at. But if we want to get into more DCIM, we'd probably navigate down to inside plant DCIM, whatever you want to refer to it as. Here, where we have multiple objects across a diagram. Again, diagram can be certainly turned off. Let me close that. Where we can turn the background off or turn it back on, and see, in this case, a floor plan, data center type floor plan, where we have cabinets. So each rectangle is representing a cabinet in your data center. And when you select the cabinet, you're going to see information on the left-hand side about the cabinet. There's a manufacturer model of the cabinet. How big is the cabinet? Available rack units, in this case, 0 rack units left. I think I can annotate this here. So if I move this over, you've got available rack units, you've got power, power used, and power, sort of the expected power, right? You expect up to 10,000 watts. You're actually using more than 10,000. So obviously you got a little overage there, and then weight compared to what the weight threshold is. I've got some different colors of cabinets you'll see here. These colors are, if you look at what's called the rack override, gives you sort of a percentage breakdown of what that means, where 75 to 100%, basically you got a red cabinet, but 75 to 100% of what? Well, on the left-hand side, if we erase some of this stuff here, and I select the diagram here, you're going to see settings, and I can see it based on rack utilization or power or weight, as the case may be. So rack override. So having rack overrides, or at least information about your cabinet's size, rack units, how many rack units are used, how many are available, they obviously help you to do capacity planning, understand where you might have space available to rack certain, your devices that you're going to be purchasing, plan on projects and things like that. So, and if you do have, clear all my drawings, if you do have space available, you might want to even reserve that space. Like in this case, I've got a cabinet, I've got some space at the top here. So maybe, there's some devices or something that I need to plan on having in my environment, right? So if I go over here and I say, oh, let me find a big old router and drop that in there, and it adds the router, but you may also want to make sure that people know that this is a task. There's going to be an install of this. So there's an ad, and you might have a date when you're expecting to insert it, and you might assign it to a work order, put some comments in, and then submit that. And what'll happen is there'll be a notification sent to who's supposed to be doing that work. But what's nice is, even though the device technically isn't in the environment yet, you're creating a work order, a task, and you're also saying, hey, this needs to be installed. But visually, that, hey, somebody's reserved this space, so it's going to be consumed. And you could add your cards for this device, and it'll be associated with the work order, and links and other things too. So that's kind of a nice thing to be able to do. Again, more from a planning perspective, right? But if you want to see visually, which racks are empty or not, red one's probably pretty well taken, consumed space wise. Yellow getting there, green probably where you're going to find some space, right? So it's nice to be able to see things based on rack utilization, but power also, or even weight, if that's a factor in the environment. I mean, all cabinets are going to have some weight, I think, capacity, but I don't know if too many people really have to follow that unless you're in a upstairs floor or something like I have here. So I have other objects in this diagram, some cameras, like a fire extinguisher. I even have a ladder down there. So the tool is pretty flexible. It doesn't have to be just racks and switches and things like that. You can put other things in there that make sense for your environment, things you're trying to track. I mean, in a data center, it's always nice to know where the fire extinguishers are. Have they been checked recently, in the last year? Make sure they're still working. You don't want a non-working fire extinguisher, that's for sure, when the time comes. So when you are building out cabinets, if I had to build out a cabinet, somebody said, okay, here's a cabinet, I need to put equipment into it. Again, drag and drop is certainly one way of performing that task, where I can go in and choose different device types. Maybe you got a server you got to put in. This is a 2-container rack, so I have front and back space. For the most part, I typically use the front side of the cabinet, but you can use the back side as well. So if you want to show that back space being consumed, we have ways of doing that. Or you can just add blanking panels or just leave it open, if it's free space. Object for us in netTerrain, you have devices. Devices can have slots for cards if the device requires that. This particular device is a patch panel, so I have cards that I can drag and drop and place into it and create those cards and whatnot. So it just depends on what you're trying to do. Now, this data that we have in the system, when you have devices out there in the real world, you want to collect information about them and bring them into your DCIM tool. There's different ways of doing this. One way is through Excel import, which I'll show in a second. Another way is something like discovery, where you're going to go in and do an SNMP type discovery. You're going to place IP addresses, in our case, into our SNMP discovery tool connector, and go out and have the system go and go out and interrogate those devices and see if they exist and do they return a response, assuming you have your users and passwords right. And if you do, and the information's there, then it'll create a diagram and show you those devices. And if there's connections, it'll show you that as well. But these devices, you'll notice that they will have different pieces of data about them: system description, contact, uptime, sys location, last discovery. So a lot of standard SNMP stuff. But you may also want to gather data specific to the device type and via SNMP. So you might have a SNMP OID where I need to capture, let's say, of a device like a temperature sensor here. I want to capture the temperature. Maybe there's an internal, an external, and maybe even a dew point. So you're getting obviously sort of a humidity type value. Well, this device does those things. So I can go click on the chart and see, what was the last temperature here? Red, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Over the last hour, over the last day, obviously over the last day, things sort of went down a bit to 78 and all the way up to 86. You might want to watch it for the week. And a lot of this may not matter. You just may want to make sure that it's not exceeding a threshold. So for instance, in the case of, temperature sensor, you may not want to exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit, but it is nice to be able to see a trend, and if it's sort of starting to trend up. Mine's at 86 right now, so it's sort of got this baseline a bit below 90, so I'm pretty happy with that. But if we look to a longer period of time, make this a little bigger, right? We can kind of see we got a little close here. Wasn't too close. It was 88, but for the most part, it's been pretty consistent. I mean, that's because this lab's in a room in our office, and there's a space for lab equipment. And of course, it's technically air conditioned in there. Weekends and evenings, it gets a little hotter, but it's usually not too bad. But we do have thresholds. So we can set alarms to go off. We can set an email notification, SMS. So if we do exceed that a number, we can have that, sort of happen. You could do that for something like power. So if you want to see current load or voltage or whatever it happens to be, this is current load in amps for one of my APC rack devices. Pretty consistent around 2-3 amps. So not much to watch there. It's been pretty steady as to where it's at. So there's not a lot of variability in that one. This one here, this UPS, this one varies a little bit more between current and voltage. Kind of get some, average output current peaking up here around 80, but for the most part, it's probably averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of, well, this is saying 78. So, but if you look sort of in the middle, it's probably in the 76 range. Again, you could set up an alert, SMS, or an email to have it send a notification and just sort of alert you. So when you're talking about DCIM, I mean, that's a little bit in the weeds with DCIM. Not everybody cares about monitoring data points over time, but certainly getting data into a system like ours, you want to try and automate things. So discovery is one way to do that, where you set up IP ranges and go out and do a discovery. We can also connect to systems APIs. So we have different what are called connectors, where I can go in and say, oh, I've got a network monitoring tool called SolarWinds, pretty common, and I could name this, and then I could submit this, and then I could connect it to my SolarWinds. I don't actually have SolarWinds in my environment, but a lot of people do. But it's easy for us to connect to it and pull devices from that system into netTerrain to help you visualize that information. So if you need that, but so yeah, something like Excel is a great way to bring data into a system like ours, where I've got a area here set up where I can go in and say, I want to do an Excel import. I'm going to grab an import sheet. This is an example sheet where you've got data in the Excel sheet and then you just want to import it. So we do have some requirements around that. There's some couple columns of data that you need for nodes and like 4 columns for links, but it's not terribly complicated. Once you know a few things about how it works, then you can do your import and import that Excel data. So, and that's what's happening here. This is importing some objects, some links, and so on. And I'll show you what that Excel sheet looks like as well. Or I'll show you an example one once this is done. Takes a minute or so. It's just 3 buildings, a few links. I think there's some fiber cables and some hierarchy stuff going on here, but we'll take a look at it as far as what it can do. But it's a pretty common thing to use, especially in the beginning of a project. You want to mass import data. But I do have customers that use it on a regular basis, where people in the field will fill out data, send it in, somebody will upload it, and that kind of thing. So, but you get something like this. It positioned objects based on lat and long. It added a manhole. It added some devices into the manhole. I've got some devices that we're connecting to through a 24-strand fiber cable. We have strands that got terminated and also got connected. And there's a splice tray in here where I've got some strands connecting through. They're being spliced together between cables. So that's easy to see there. But we can go into the building and actually see, first floor and the cabinet. And you can see some of the devices have been rack mounted automatically. Again, this is all from the Excel sheet. So it's really kind of nice having this ability inside netTerrain to do those Excel imports. The Excel package itself, if we get an example, it shows, there you go, objects being imported. There's basically two required fields, the name and the type. But then it's got some other things like latitude, longitude, data fields being imported, and so on. So pretty nice to use. Oh, I'm not sure you guys can see this. I'm sorry. Let me reshare for a second. I just want to make sure you guys can see everything. I'll just share my whole screen here. So there you go. But this is the Excel sheet. So I got some nodes I'm bringing in, and again, data fields. And then I've got my links, 4 columns that are required for links. Basically, the name of the link, the type of the link, and then where does it connect on each end. And I have some information in here about that too. So, but when you're talking about DCIM, right? A lot of things. What you're doing is in the data center, trying to build out those cabinets, right? Trying to create connections, trying to understand your rack elevations, and how are we going to do that again efficiently? And the way we do that is we try and bring in data where we can. We try and automate things where we can, and that can be either SNMP connectors. It could be connectors to other systems like ServiceNow and SolarWinds and things like that. But certainly things like Excel import and so on. The other thing that you might want to do is with IPAM. I'm going to switch over here for my IPAM because I've got some. Because when you're talking about data centers, you may also need to manage IP address spaces. You might have an IP manager already, which is great. If you do, this isn't really necessarily something you're going to need. But we do have an integration between our IPAM and our DCIM where you can see a specific device, an IP address. You can assign the IP address to the device, where you can click and see the device, go to the device, but also, of course, see its IP address, but also assign another IP address if you need to. So if I have a device and on the left-hand side it says IP address, I can click on IP and then I can go find a different IP address if I need to assign it to a different IP. Okay. If it's the IP is taken, then you'll see that it's taken. You're going to take an IP from an existing device. So you have that, but also you can get into again, sort of seeing the IP addresses that are used or in use. Again, speaks back to DCIM, right? DCIM, you're talking about infrastructure management, rack elevations, connectivity possibly, but also data that's going to go into these things, into these devices, right? If I'm managing a device and it's I need to see certain data fields, properties, maybe things like maintenance dates. Those are all things you can get into doing. So, all right. So yeah, a lot of flexibility there. A lot of, like, on the left-hand side, I've got different data fields. Those are all user definable. So our tool is very flexible. If there's specific devices that you need to have specific data fields for, you can do that. You can create standardized data fields you use across all your devices or device types if you want to do that too. So again, we keep it pretty flexible. Certainly in DCIM, you want to be able to do reporting. So I can go up to tools and go to my query builder tool, and I can recall reports that I've created. This tool allows me to create a report, it saves it, and then other people can use that report if they want to. And in this case, this one is a maintenance report. So I can see maintenance dates, when things are going to expire, what's the device type, where's the device live, what's the device's serial number, when's the warranty expiration, what's its IP address, and so on and so forth. I can also click and have it take me to that device as well. But the query builder tool allows you to create your own reports, your own queries, and they're, again, something that other users can take advantage of and use as well. And then we also have, in addition to that, we have a dashboard reporting tool or engine you can take advantage of and use that. There's some pre-built reports, things for like, getting asset lists, asset types. There's some summary and work order information over there, and you can see a report. You can click on part of it and get the data out of it, export that. That's Excel. So it's nice to be able to do that. If that's the kind of data you're trying to get out of the system. We do give you the ability to get your data back out of the system if you need to or want to, do it through a query, or again, some of these other reporting options. Um, and, the data that's in the system is data that you can always get back out if you need it. So DCIM does have the ability to, of course, do the rack and stack and elevations and all that stuff. If you need to also sort of interact with what we call outside plant, where you're going from inside a building to, you might have fiber cable, strands, conduit, whatever it is. You may be doing patching or splicing of strands. These are all things you can do and take care of, and have device types like your splice trays, cases, and cards for that. We have um, some pictures we've uploaded about the manhole so we can kind of see in a little more detail. But, the splice case we can go into and actually see. In this case, you can see the splicing on each side. You have a strand coming in and a strand. So you can imagine out in the field, you're trying to connect these two strands together. This is just how we show or depict the strands being fusion spliced. You've got a cross connected between the two connection points for the strands. So it's just how we lay it out. It's just a way to obviously visualize it. And so giving you that capability. So that's always nice. But with that said, I'll mention just a couple other things having to do with cost and licensing. Everybody wants to know things about that. So yeah, just posting stuff up there. So we license things really based on objects. Objects for us are typically things like you rack mount, right? Your devices, your routers, your switches. You might have manholes, handholds, buildings, floors, rooms. Those are all things that kind of mix into your license count. We don't actually license for the links themselves. So links you don't really have to worry about, or cards. So subcomponents, like in the case of this particular cabinet, when we look at it, we can double click on it and we'll see all these cards that go inside the chassis. Those actually aren't licensed. They're not really part of the licensing scheme. It's really just the base chassis, right? So if you're looking at a cabinet, there's probably 12 or 15, there's 12 devices in here in the cabinet. So those are really what you're licensed for, plus the cabinet itself and some hierarchy stuff, right? So those are the things you want to check out. You can go do a pricing request. We start out, I think, in the what we call the 1,000 object range, which I think is around $5,000 a year. But again, get an official quote. I'm just blathering on a bit, but that'll give you a ballpark at least to kind of know where you're at. We do cloud, and then we also let you do your own hosting. Most customers still self-host, but we do have a lot of cloud customers as well. So we kind of leave it flexible so you guys kind of get the tool you want and host it the way you want, and really kind of affect the licensing the way you want as well. So hopefully you get somewhat of a cost you might want, or at least as fits in your budget, hopefully. So with that said, if there's other questions, let us know in the chat. There's a whole bunch of stuff that was shared, and we're happy to answer other questions, do a bigger product demo for yourself or your colleagues, offer, that was mentioned, the trial, and we'll help out any way we can to answer your questions and hopefully get you, answers to any questions that come up as you use the tool or just in general. So thank you guys very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Happy holidays. And I look forward to hopefully seeing and working with you, with some of you in the new year. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for joining, guys. Take care. Happy holidays. I'll send you an
Bye-bye.
email with the trial.
Great.
Thanks.